My name is Brandi Small, and I'm going to be talking about the first cell phone, its history, and relation to the Cold War. To start off, I want to tell you a little bit about the history behind the cell phone. At the time, Motorola and AT&T were the two major competitors in the telephone industry. However, Motorola was competing against AT&T to create the first cell phone because they didn't want AT&T to monopolize the telephone industry. AT&T had already been working with the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, on car phones and other technologies, so they had a head start. They had even developed the first cell network system, which is what led to the term cell phone, because cell phones relied on the cell network to function. Motorola ended up winning the competition as they had Martin Cooper on their side. He was an employee who worked his way up to executive, and when he left, he and his wife founded the Dyna LLC, which produced many other technologies still in use today. Martin Cooper himself is known as the father of the cell phone. He created it in 1973 and made the first call on April 3rd of that year. This first call was essentially a prank call, as he called his competitor at AT&T to say, "Hey, I'm calling from the first real cell phone. What are you going to do about it?" Then hung up and went into his meeting to promote it. The invention itself was called the Dynatac 8000X. It was a beast. The dimensions of this phone were between 9 to 13 inches tall, not including the antenna, 1.75 inches wide, and 3.5 inches thick at its thickest points, which was the top and the bottom. It weighed between 2 to 2.5 pounds, and the kicker was it only had 30 minutes of talk time, though it had a 10-hour charge period. It also had an LED display and could store 30 numbers at a time. If you wanted to store another one after 30, you would have to delete old numbers. While created in 1973, it didn't hit the market until March 6 of 1983, 10 years later. The cost was $3,995, and when adjusted for inflation, it cost $10,378 in today's money. Clearly, the use was intended for businessmen and the upper class, because the modern income in the 80s was $13,800, and the phone cost almost a third of that, so you had to have money to get it. The following is an advertisement for the first cell phone, which aired in 1989. The following is the first promotional video Motorola put out to support the cell phone.
Those who think getting a car phone is not for them, whatever the reason, haven't kept up with the booming industry of cellular radio telephones. Scenes like this are becoming commonplace in U.S. cities where cellular is available today. This revolution in communications could make it possible for more and more people to have a phone in their car, or even one that travels with you. Like this unique cellular portable made by Motorola, which weighs only 30 ounces. Right now, businessmen and women are major users of radio telephones where cellular is in service. But more people will take advantage of cellular as its benefits become apparent. Eventually, seeing people using cellular phones may seem as commonplace as someone checking time on an electronic watch, figuring on an electronic calculator, or programming on an electronic computer. Industry watchers say there are only a few thousand cellular phones in use right now, but that number is expected to grow considerably within the next few years during the cellular revolution.
The promotional video was put out because Motorola was having a hard time reaching its consumers. Clearly they succeeded, though, as the cell phone is still in use today. Of course, many technologies led up to the cell phone, and it wasn't a single-handed job. Martin Cooper himself even said in 2003, "Even though I conceived of it, it really took teamwork, and literally hundreds of people ended up creating the vision of what cellular is today, which, by the way, is not complete. We are still working on it and trying to make it better." He is not wrong, as we see new cell phones come out every single year. Some of the technology leading up to it were train phones, car phones, and walkie-talkies. Car phones were by far one of the more interesting, as they needed a large enough power source that they relied on a car battery to function. The term mobile phone also was coined here, as they were in automobiles and were literally mobile with you as you drove. Nowadays, they're called mobile phones because they are mobile with us in our pockets. Walkie-talkies were also important because they resembled what the first cell phone looked like. The only difference was they relied on radio band communication instead. Television also played a role in the development of cell phones. Star Trek, which aired in 1966 before the first cell phone, contained fictional technology like communicators and tricorders. Depicted below on the left is a picture of a communicator from Star Trek. Clearly, it resembles the first flip phone that Motorola put out called the Microtac 8000, or the Microtac, which is depicted on the bottom right. Other technologies like Bluetooth were also depicted in Star Trek. They seem to have predicted the future. Of course, we didn't stop there. Technology has continued to improve and cell phones have become more efficient and lightweight. Martin Cooper knew we wouldn't stop there and was quoted saying, "But we did envision that someday the phone would be so small that you could hang it on your ear or even have it embedded under your skin." Again, he wasn't wrong here either. We have had technology that goes over the ear and uses Bluetooth, and we will probably soon have it embedded in our skin as we progress. Here is a video showing just how much a cell phone has changed from 1983 to 2017. We have made leaps and bounds since 1983 with cellular technology. Who knows where we will go in the future? Finally, the most important information is how the cell phone connects to the Cold War. As a reminder, the Cold War was between the US and the USSR, or the Soviet Union, and lasted from 1945 until 1991, though some scholars argue it is still taking place today. The Cold War had many ideologies and important concepts that sprung up, including capitalism and consumerism, efficiency and urgency, unity and globalization. The cell phone connects to each of these. Capitalism is defined as an economic system characterized by private or corporate ownership of capital goods, by investments that are determined by private decision, and by prices, production, and the distribution of goods that are determined mainly by competition in a free market. Consumerism is the theory that an increasing consumption of goods is economically desirable, or a preoccupation with and an inclination toward the buying of the consumer. Capitalism was important during the Cold War because we were focused on supporting our economy and ideals. After all, this was called the war against communism. Consumerism was a way to support capitalism, support our people, businesses, and eventually our economy. The cell phone fit in perfectly with this. It was a product made for the consumer and consumer ideals, and it wasn't cheap, so it's supporting our growing economy and capitalism through this as well. Next, the cell phone relates to efficiency. The US had needs during this time. A need for quick and easy communication, to be better than and beat the Soviet Union, and to improve ourselves. We needed quick and easy communication because during this time we feared the impending doom of nuclear annihilation, so we wanted to be able to communicate faster in case this happened. The cell phone achieved just that, as you could call your neighbor, your mother, your sister at the click of a button, no matter where you were. We also wanted to be better than the Soviet Union. We could see this with the space race and the arms race. It had to do with having better technology, and the cell phone showed us that as well. It was new and nobody had it. We also wanted to improve ourselves, and this new technology showed our dominance in the tech industry, so that was important. The cell phone also connects to unity. During this time, there was mass fear and paranoia. Fear dominated over the neighbors, the juveniles, communists, and deviants. We were afraid of anybody who was differing from the norm. So to calm this fear, we wanted connection and unity. We figured if we could have a cell phone where we could communicate, there had to be a connection, and therefore we had to be unified. Finally, the cell phone relates to globalization. The Cuban Missile Crisis happened during the Cold War in 1963. This led to the first hotline being established because we almost faced mass nuclear annihilation due to a miscommunication. 10 years later, the first cell phone was developed, and 10 years after that, the first cell phone hit the market. So we can see that our need for communication has continued, and today we even have cell phones that let us communicate internationally. Ultimately, the cell phone was just what the US needed. Not only did it show our superiority during the Cold War, but it helped ease the minds of the American people. These are my sources, and I thank you for watching.